Hello students, welcome to Well Explained PDF. Today I am here with class 10th biology, chapter life processes, and the subtopic is respiration in animals. In my previous lecture, I discussed about respiration in plants and what is respiration and its type. So students, you might be knowing what is respiration. Respiration is the process of release of energy from the food. That is, when food gets oxidized, what is released? Energy. And this process is known as respiration. And this respiration takes place in the cell organelle which is known as mitochondria. Therefore, the mitochondria is also known as the powerhouse of the cell. So let's begin with the respiration in animals, especially the lower animals. So first of all, we'll discuss about respiration in amoeba. As you all know, amoeba is a unicellular organism. Unicellular means it is made up of one cell, and the same cell performs all the life processes of amoeba, that is nutrition, respiration, circulation, excretion. The same cell performs all the functions. As you can see, the body of this amoeba is irregular in shape, and the gaseous exchange in amoeba takes place by the process of diffusion. I think you all might be knowing what is diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of substances from the region of higher concentration to region of lower concentration. So oxygen concentration is more in water, so it is entering inside the amoeba, and as carbon dioxide concentration is more inside the body of amoeba, so it is leaving the body of amoeba to water through the process of diffusion by this membrane of the amoeba. Now respiration in earthworm. As you all know, earthworm lives in soil. The earthworm breathes through its skin as long as it stays wet. Means the actually it is not respiration. This is actually the exchange of gases. That is the breathing. So the earthworm breathes through its moist skin. Okay. And once the oxygen enters the body of the earthworm, then it reaches to the cell, and there it oxidizes the food which is already present in the cell of the organism, and energy is released. Now respiration in fish, obviously this is also, these gills are also used for the exchange of gases. It's actually the breathing in fish, means breathing organs of the fish. Exchange of gases takes place with the help of gills. Now here the different ways of breathing in different animals are given. Spider has book lungs for the exchange of gases. In sponges, outflow inflow, that is simple diffusion through the membrane. In caterpillar and other insects, spiracles are there which help in the exchange of gases. In fish, it is gills, and in chicken and the higher animals, they are the lungs. This is the respiratory system of a human being, which we are going to study in detail about the respiration in human beings. You can see the air enters through nose. These are the organs of respiratory system. This nose, then it enters to the windpipe, that is the trachea. Then trachea it comes to bronchi, then bronchioles. These two are the lungs. This is diaphragm. They all constitute the respiratory system of a human being. You can see there are two lungs, trachea, then two lungs are there, right lung and left lung, right lobe, left lobe, right bronchi, left bronchi. Then bronchi further subdivides into secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, then bronchioles, and at the end of each bronchiole there is a bunch grape-like structure. You can see they are alveoli, and there is a muscular diaphragm also. Now, what is the difference between breathing and respiration? Breathing is intake of fresh air rich in oxygen and removal of foul air that is rich in carbon dioxide. Means taking in of oxygen rich air and giving out carbon dioxide rich air is known as breathing. Whereas respiration is the oxidation of food to form carbon dioxide, water and energy. Breathing is a physical process, whereas respiration is a biochemical process, means the reactions are going on in the process of respiration, whereas physical process means this is a simple exchange of gases. In breathing, no energy is released, rather it is used up for carrying out these exchange of gases, whereas in respiration energy is released in the form of ATP. We have studied earlier also, ATP is adenosine triphosphate. Breathing is an extracellular process. Extracellular process means it takes place outside the cells, whereas respiration is an intracellular process. That means it takes place inside the cell. In breathing, no enzymes are involved, whereas in respiration, large number of enzymes are involved. Breathing is confined to certain organs. Certain organ means the organs of the respiratory system, which we have studied, that the nose, trachea, lungs, bronchi, lungs, okay. Whereas respiration occurs in all the cells of the body, means each and every cell of the body, okay. This is cellular respiration. The substrate of cellular respiration is glucose, that is C6H12O6. It takes place in two steps. First step is glycolysis, okay. In this glucose is broken down into pyruvate, and step 2 is the Krebs cycle. Up this step 2 depends on whether oxygen is present or not, okay. If oxygen is present, then oxidative respiration, which is known as aerobic respiration. If oxygen is absent or no oxygen present, then it is fermentation or anaerobic respiration. Now, what are the functions of the respiratory system? The very first function is gas exchange between the blood and the external environment. Okay, that is gases means oxygen and carbon dioxide. They are exchanged between the blood and the external environment. Whereas this exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place within the lungs in the alveoli. Okay, first of all, only inhale and exhalation through nose, gas exchange between blood and external environment, and this takes place within the lungs, especially in the alveoli. It also purify, warm and humidify the incoming air. You will study in the later section how does it purify. It purify means it traps the dust and dust particles, the hair present in the nostrils. They trap the dust particles. The capillaries present make it warm, and humidify means uh, humidity, that is the water vapor is added to the air. And also it helps in producing sound for communication. Now, human respiratory system. This is the respiratory pathway. The air enters to the nostrils and then to nasal chamber, then pharynx, then comes larynx or the voice box, then trachea, that is the windpipe, bronchi, bronchioles, and at last it reaches to the alveoli. And here the alveoli, it is richly supplied with the blood capillaries, and the gaseous exchange takes place between the blood and the alveoli. And the respiratory organs are lungs. Now the first step in the exchange of gases starts in nose. Nose has two openings which are known as nostrils. Nostrils are the external openings of the nose. These are also called as external nares. Similarly, a pair of internal opening is also present, and they open into the pharynx, which are known as internal nares. The openings which we can see, which are outside the body, They are known as external layers, and same openings are there at the end which open into pharynx, and they are known as internal layers. Next is the nasal chamber. The space between the external and internal layers is known as nasal chamber. Internally, each nasal chamber is lined by a mucous membrane. There is ciliated epithelium is present in the nasal chamber, and this is divided into right and left parts by a cartilage which is known as mesenteroid. Okay. Now next is nasal chamber. Each nasal chamber is further divided into three regions. They are the vestibule. This is the anterior most part of the nasal chamber. It has here to trap dust particles and prevent them from going inside. Next is respiratory part. This is the part richly supplied with capillaries. It warms the air and makes it moist. And the third region of the nasal chamber is sensory part, and this is lined by sensory epithelium for the detection of smell. We know the nose also helps us in smelling the things. This is done by this sensory part. Now after nasal chamber comes the pharynx. Nasal chamber opens into the pharynx. It is a short vertical tube measuring about 12 centimeter in length. The respiratory and the food passages, they cross each other in the pharynx by two separate passages. Its upper part is known as nasopharynx, which helps in the conduction of air, and lower part is called as laryngopharynx or oropharynx, which conducts food to the esophagus. In the pharynx, there are tonsils, which are made up of lymphatic tissues. And what is the function of lymphatic tissue? They kill bacteria trapped in the mucus. Now then comes larynx. Larynx is also known as sound box. It is the sound producing organ, hence it is also called as the sound box. In males, the larynx increases in size at the time of puberty. Therefore, it is known as Adam's apple and can be noticed in the neck region. From the pharynx, air enters the larynx through an opening called as glottis, and this glottis is guarded by a flap called epiglottis. It prevents the entry of food particles into the respiratory passage. Along the side of the glottis are two folds of elastic tissues which are called as vocal cords. And what are vocal cords responsible for producing sound? When the vocal cord vibrates, the sound is produced. Now the next organ is trachea. It is also known as windpipe. It is about 12 centimeter long and 2.5 centimeter wide. As you can see, this is trachea, and it lies in front of esophagus and it extends downward into the neck. These two, esophagus as well as trachea, they are found in the neck regions, and this trachea lies in front of the esophagus. Okay, the wall of the trachea is made up of fibrous muscular tissue supported by C-shaped cartilaginous ring. You can see these are the cartilaginous rings. These are 16 to 20 in number, and they make the trachea rigid. The trachea is internally lined with ciliated epithelium and mucous glands. If any foreign particle enters, it is immediately expelled out by the cuffing action, and these dust particles get trapped by the mucus. By ciliary movement, they are swept towards the larynx, and finally they enter the esophagus and removed from the body. Now the bronchi and bronchioles. The distal end of the trachea is divided into two bronchi behind the sternum. Each bronchus is supported by a complete ring of cartilage. It enters into the lung of its respective side, means bronchi of right side will enter into right lung, and from of left side will enter into left. On entering the lung, each bronchus further divides into secondary and then tertiary bronchi, and further division makes the bronchioles. that is tertiary bronchi divide into many minute bronchioles. Wall of each bronchiole does not have cartilage rings. Means tertiary bronchi तक तो cartilaginous ring होती है. After that, there are no cartilage rings. Each bronchiole ends into a balloon-like alveoli. You can see alveolus. This alveoli is plural. You can see this is windpipe, then bronchi, then secondary and tertiary, then bronchioles, and this is alveoli. These alveoli make the lungs spongy and elastic. Now comes lungs. These are the principal respiratory organs located in the thoracic cavity. Thoracic cavity means chest cavity. Lungs are paired, means two in numbers. They are hollow and elastic organs. That means they can stretch. Each lung is enclosed in a pleural sac. This pleural sac is made up of two membranes, outer parietal and inner visceral. The enclosed cavity is called as the pleural cavity, which is filled with a fluid known as pleural fluid, which lubricates the pleura and prevents the friction when the pleural membranes slide over each other. Means you can see it's a double membrane. Beach mein, this is pleural cavity. The outer one is outer parietal and the inner one is inner visceral, and this is filled with a fluid which is known as pleural fluid, which helps to prevent the friction between the pleural membranes. Lungs are pink in color, soft, elastic and distensible. They are highly vascular, richly supplied with blood capillaries. Each sac has about 20 alveoli which look like grapes. You can see these grape-like structure, bunch of grape-like structure. These are alveoli. They are covered with a network of capillaries from the pulmonary artery and vein. The alveoli have very thin wall composed of simple non-ciliated squamous epithelium. It has collagen and elastin fibers. This makes the alveoli very flexible. And it is these alveoli only where the gaseous exchange takes place. Each alveolus is about 0.1 millimeter in diameter. The human lungs has about 750 million alveoli, which increases surface area for the exchange of gases. The total area covered by them is about 50 times the surface area of skin. And alveoli are supplied by a network of pulmonary capillaries. This is the mechanism of breathing. You can see the air, it is coming in and out, in, out. You can see these are the capillaries where the gaseous exchange is taking place. Now mechanism of breathing. The air inhaled, what happens in inhalation? Inhalation means taking in of oxygen rich air. What happens? The diaphragm contracts, that means it moves down, and the rib cage it expands and the outwards. Okay, when it moves down and the rib cage or the bones of the rib they move outwards, what happens? The chest cavity increases and the air rushes in. Opposite is exhalation, that is giving out of carbon dioxide rich air. In this the diaphragm relaxes, that means it moves up. In this it moves down, making the chest cavity large. Here it moves up and the ribs they move downwards. Now inspiration or inhalation. It is an active process brought about by the ribs, intercostal muscles, sternum and diaphragm. The intercostal muscle contract, pulling the ribs outward and increasing the space in the thoracic cavity. The lower part of the breastbone, that is sternum, is also raised. The sternum is also known as breastbone. The diaphragm contracts and becomes almost flat. Volume of the thoracic cavity is further increased. Pressure on the lungs decreases. The lungs expand and their volume increases, and atmospheric air, it rushes into the lungs through the respiratory passage to make the pressure equal. Thus, the air enters the lungs. In this way, the air enters the lungs or inhalation is done. Now, in expiration or exhalation, it is a passive process. The reverse of inspiration happens here. The intercostal muscles relax, pulling the rib inward. The diaphragm relaxes and again becomes dome shaped. Thus, collective contraction of intercostal muscles and diaphragm reduces the volume of the thoracic cavity. The pressure on the lungs increases. The lungs get compressed and the air in the lungs rushes out through the external nares. Alternate inspiration and expiration together form a respiratory cycle, or you can say one breath. It occurs 16 to 20 times per minute in men. Breathing is controlled under the control of medulla oblongata of the brain. Now, what is respiratory quotient? The ratio of the volume of carbon dioxide upon oxygen used in unit time is called as respiratory quotient. It varies for different substrates. As we have studied earlier, the substrate, usually we take glucose as substrate. Otherwise, substrate may be fat, protein or organic acid also. So in glucose, this RQ is 1, fat has 0.7, protein has 0.85, and in organic acids it is 1.3 or 1.4. In anaerobic respiration, RQ is infinity. RQ, that is respiratory quotient, is determined by means of Ganong's respirometer or respirometer, whatever you may call it like. Now the transport of gases. The transport of respiratory gases takes place in the following events. There are 3 steps: external respiration, then internal respiration, and then cellular respiration. Coming to external respiration, it includes the respiratory processes which takes place in the lungs. Oxygen from the lungs diffuse in the lung capillaries and carbon dioxide from the lung capillaries diffuses into the lungs. External respiration includes 3 events, that is the exchange of gases, formation of oxyhemoglobin and release of carbon dioxide. Now exchange of gases. This exchange of gases takes place by the process of diffusion, that is from a region of higher concentration to region of lower concentration. Now the concentration of oxygen is higher in the inspired air and then in the alveolar blood. And the concentration of carbon dioxide is higher in the alveolar blood than in the inspired air. This results in the exchange of oxygen from the air into the blood and carbon dioxide from blood into the air, which is exhaled out. Then comes the formation of oxyhemoglobin. The absorbed oxygen, it combines with the hemoglobin of RBCs. We know what is hemoglobin. It is the red colored pigment which imparts red color to the red blood cells, and this oxygen, it combines with hemoglobin. It is a respiratory protein pigment. Actually, hemoglobin is a protein. It forms the unstable oxyhemoglobin. That is, hemoglobin plus oxygen will form oxyhemoglobin. Now, third step is release of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide from the blood is released outside into the air. Carbon dioxide is brought by the blood from the tissue cells in the form of sodium and potassium bicarbonates in the blood plasma, and some amount of carbon dioxide is also brought by the hemoglobin in the form of carbaminohemoglobin, and carbon dioxide brought in all these forms is released into the air. The second step is the internal respiration. It includes the respiratory process which takes place in the tissue cells. Oxygen brought by the blood is given to the tissue cells and carbon dioxide from the tissue is passed into the blood. When the blood reaches the tissue cells, the unstable oxyhemoglobin breaks down to form hemoglobin and oxygen. The third step is, and the final step, cellular respiration. It takes place inside the cell. The ultimate purpose of respiration is to release energy. This is carried out in the cells by oxidation of food. It results in the formation of ATP molecules. Energy is stored in this form and this energy is used to carry out vital life processes. So ATP is called as the energy currency of the cell. ATP is formed as the main product using mitochondria, while byproducts are carbon dioxide and water vapor, which are transported by the blood to the lungs. Energy released as heat to certain extent is used to maintain the body temperature, and here the process of respiration ends. Now you must have heard about carbon monoxide poisoning. Carbon monoxide is a gas, CO, and hemoglobin has about 250 times more affinity for carbon monoxide than for oxygen. Suppose we know that hemoglobin combines with the oxygen which is in the blood, which is exchanged in the alveoli of the lungs. When the oxygen reaches the blood, what happens is oxygen, it combines with the hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. Actually, hemoglobin is the carrier of this oxygen to each and every part of the cell. But suppose if the air which we are inhaling is having more carbon monoxide and less oxygen, if both the gases are available, oxygen and carbon monoxide, the hemoglobin opts to go for carbon monoxide because it has more affinity for carbon monoxide. Now, in the presence of carbon monoxide, it readily combines to form a stable compound which is called as carboxyhemoglobin. Now, when this hemoglobin is already occupied by carbon monoxide, so where with this oxygen will attach, so this oxygen combining capacity with hemoglobin decreases, and as a result tissue suffers from oxygen starvation. It leads to asphyxiation, that means unconsciousness, and patient may go to coma, and in extreme cases it leads to death. Now, what is the treatment of this carbon monoxide poisoning? The person needs to be administered with pure oxygen carbon dioxide mixture to have a very high oxygen level to dissociate carbon monoxide from the hemoglobin. And what are the causes for this carbon monoxide poisoning? Carbon monoxide poisoning occurs often in closed rooms with open stove burners of furnaces or in garages having running automobile engines. Means if you are sleeping in a closed room and there open stove burner are there, or in hills you have seen in fireplaces are there, and if something is burning in presence of oxygen, the carbon dioxide is produced. But if the room is closed, so what will happen? With the passage of time, the oxygen which is present inside the room will decrease, its concentration will decrease, and meanwhile in place of carbon dioxide what is produced? Carbon monoxide. And when this carbon monoxide is inhaled, what happens? This carbon monoxide poisoning is taken place. So that's all for the chapter. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. If you have not subscribed my channel yet, please subscribe it and press the bell icon so that whenever a new video is uploaded, you will get notification. God bless you.